I want to say a few words about today's speaker, J.R. Becker. He is the author of Annabelle and Aiden, the children's book series dedicated to inspiring a new generation of scientists, thinkers, and all around adventurers. The first book on evolution became a #1 bestseller on Amazon. Since it launched in late 2016, the 8 book series has since won various awards, raised over $100,000 on Kickstarter, and has sold over 35,000 copies. Um, I actually bought the series. It's 8 books currently, and I've been reading them to our daughter, and it's great. I urge you all to get one, and if you have family or friends, it would be a great gift. JR holds a BA in philosophy and a Juris Doctorate from Emory University School of Law. When he's not working as a trademark lawyer or playing drums, JR is talking in all the science and philosophy podcasts and books he can, and dreaming up whimsical ideas for future children's stories that will both entertain and inform. He lives in New Jersey, and we are extremely happy to have him here today. Without further ado, JR.
Wow, I'm very happy to be here. Thank you, Greg, for those kind words. And I'm really sincerely happy to be here. I don't do this often, and I haven't done this for a long time. So I'm very excited. Okay, I'm the author of the Annabelle Aiden children's book series on science and critical thinking. Today we're going to speak about how to raise curious critical thinkers and why we even would want to. Why is that important? So our agenda today, I broke it down into 3 different categories. First is how to keep kids curious, how to keep kids caring about the world and foster that because kids are naturally curious. But how do we encourage that? And honestly, one of the main ways to do that is just get out of the way most of the time, but a way to really accommodate that and make room for it. We also want to talk about how to raise free thinking, critical thinkers and why that matters. And then once we've done those 2 things, and we're actually sitting down and our children are asking us questions and we're sharing information with them, how do we even begin to talk about some of the big questions like death or meaning or ethics? Okay, so we're going to start with one of the first way to keep kids curious is to just be curious yourself, model it, and wonder out loud. As a parent, as an uncle, as an aunt, as anyone surrounded by young people, it's just important to say I wonder a lot. I take my kids hiking all the time. Um, about a year ago, we saw some gray deer and some brown deer. And told my kids, I wonder if most of the deer in these woods are gray or brown. I noticed the tree trunks are gray. And that started a whole conversation about natural selection and camouflage. It's just good to model curiosity and follow up with open ended questions. And that's why every single one of my 8 children's books starts with children observing nature and wondering out loud. So in Worlds Within Us on space, the children are looking at the stars. Wow, Aiden said, almost dropping his drink. Annabelle stared and started to think. How'd they get there? These moons and rocks scattered above us like so many dots. They ask a question. In my first book on evolution, they're looking into a lake and they see their reflection in the water. Annabelle says, why do we look the way that we do, with hands and feet in neat sets of 2? What made my eyes and what made my nose and the shape of my body from my head to my toes? Once they ask a question like that, as a grown up, you're going to want to swoop in there with an answer. But I find that it's usually best to sort of say, what do you think? Ask what the children think first and allow rooms for their feelings. Okay. Here we're actually introducing my character Aiden, who says, finding these answers will take far too much work. Just say it was magic, Aiden said with a smirk. Um, in my book on probably the biggest questions that a lot of secular homeschooler parents basically forced me to write, called What Happens When We Die. It was a needed book. And in that book, Annabelle and Eden are watching a bird fly towards their window, and it smashes into the window and falls to the ground, and it starts to fade away. All the friends this is the second or third page. All the friends were gathered and stood around that bird. Even Tom was deep in thought, and not a sound was heard. Annabelle asked, "What happens when we have to say goodbye? What happens when we leave this life? What happens when we die?" It's also important to allow children to have to express their feelings about a question. Forget about the answer. If your children are asking questions, you've already won half the battle, or really the full battle. They're curious. Curiosity, at the beginning at least in life, is so much more important than knowing the answers. In this case, Aiden says, "This makes me scared. I may need to pretend that even though our brains turn off, that this is not the end." Allow room for these feelings so they feel safe to wonder out loud themselves. The second way to nurture curiosity in children is to give them experiences instead of gifts. Okay, we have the holidays, unless those gifts, of course, are my books. Joking aside, gifts could be an experience and be educational, but it's important to take them hiking, go to museums, go to rallies. Um, I I disagreed with my wife at the time, but she was right when she took my daughter out of school a few months ago, and she took her to see, there was a puppet um, rallying in New York. This puppet went to every major city in the world, bringing to light the plight of refugees around the world. And my daughter had so many questions. And my wife, I said, "Why do you take her out of school? We send her to this, school that's every. She doesn't have a lot of school days, so every day she could go to school. It's valuable." And my wife said to me, "What she's learning today is worth a week in school." And my wife was right. The doll's name was Little Amal, the puppet, and this was an experience for my daughter that another day in school would not have shown her. So keeping kids curious is giving them experiences instead of gifts, and encouraging family and friends to do the same. Okay, so once kids are curious and they're asking questions, how they're going to come across a lot of information in the world. Um, we want we want to cultivate critical thinking skills so they know how to wade through all that information and distinguish truth from non-truth and pseudoscience and conspiracy theories. And why do we want to do that? So those are things I'm going to talk about. By the way, this character is in the corner there. That's the Skeptosaurus dinosaur, one of my favorite characters from my books, who always kind of brings them back down to earth. And his tail ends in a question mark. Okay. Here we go. So, why does it even matter in the first place to cultivate critical thinking? So, you don't have to squint so hard to see that we are bombarded by false information every day. You didn't have to see the Alex Jones interview last week to know about all the conspiracy theories and false information going on. As consumers, we wade through information on food labels, prescription drugs, farming practices. Our children are going to grow up, even if they're not a politician, even if our children don't grow up to be president, they're going to be a teacher. They're going to have a social media account. They're going to have a stage. They're going to influence people, even with their purchasing power in the supermarket, how they think about GMOs or organic. Um, these are important things that we really want to teach our children, how to think critically and follow evidence-based information. Okay, so I couldn't really give this presentation without including some of my favorite and most fun conspiracy theories or false information. So this is a book by Ken Ham called Dinosaurs of Eden, and it has Adam and Eve playing with the dinosaurs in the Garden of Eden. Um, I find it hilarious, but sad at the same time. But so I found this page on the internet. Dinosaurs were playful, loving creatures to Adam and Eve during their time in the garden. They helped gather fruit and use their incredible strength to turn lemons into delicious, fresh lemonade. For centuries, scientists have tried to present the dinosaurs as violent monsters because they want to scare children. It's no coincidence that most of these men have been atheists or even homosexuals who are possessed by an intense hatred of young boys and girls. So, this is a book that children could see, and it's just kind of hilarious and sad and not funny at the same time. Um, Ken Ham went on, his organization banned my first book on evolution. This is an article that came out by the Christian News Network, accusing me of targeting children with Darwinist propaganda, to which con- I confess. Um, and I was actually pretty nervous about this because I was not used to any sort of attention. But then this garnered for me so much support and love that it caused me to write a second book and send that one to Ken Ham as well. But I never heard back. One of the most fun and productive ways to cultivate critical thinking in children is to lie to your children. So before you kick me out of here, that's not really what I mean. What I really mean is to sprinkle conversations with fruitful errors and fibs that are bursting for correction. So allow me to explain. So we all know the harms of helicopter parenting, right? So, trying to raise children in a hermetically sealed room, it's just not going to work. They're not going to learn their limits. This is something my wife is very, very good at, and she had to teach me. When my children are on the edge of a rock and we're hiking, obviously, if it's very dangerous, you tell them, get down. But if they're going to scrape a knee or something, my wife and I very much believe that we really have to teach them their own limits. So let them go into the ocean up to their knees, up to their waist. Let them experience the world so that they could find their own limits. And not only that, we see so many parents, get down, put that down, put that down. They're going to go through life feeling so nervous and afraid of everything. They're never going to know, they're never going to have the attitude, I could do this. Let's see if I could do this. And you know what? Sometimes my kids fall down, scrape their knee, and cry for a minute, get back right back up with a smile and try it again. We have to teach children their limits. If children are arguing, I always want to go in there and resolve the conflict. And my wife taught me, they're never going to learn conflict resolution if you do that. It's the same thing with health. Giving a vaccine is introducing a relatively harmless substance to the body to help build up an immune system. That's the basic idea. It's the same exact thing with critical thinking. Expose children to harmless nonsense. Sprinkle conversation with playful fibs and fruitful errors bursting for correction, giving them the opportunity to build those critical thinking muscles. So my kids asked me, how far away is the moon? So I said, I don't know. Maybe first say, what do you think? That's always a good thing. And then I said, I think it's like a few blocks away. It's down the road. You make a right. And my son Aiden said, well, grandmom lives like even past there. And she's closer to us than the moon, you know? And this was great. I mean, this is how to foster critical thinking. Lie to your children. Okay, so that next slide is one of my favorite. So in my children's books, I try to sprinkle the books with playful lies like this, but there's someone who did it, I think, better than I. He's a writer for The Simpsons, and he wrote a book on reproduction. I hope you all laugh at this more than you laughed at the last slide. So it says after 30 weeks, this is a children's book. After 30 weeks of being pregnant, the baby is now fully formed inside of the lady's body, and it will soon be time for the birthing. When a lady has two babies inside of her, it's called twins. The reason why people have two legs is in case they get pregnant with twins, so they could safely grow them inside of their legs with plenty of room. The twins will feed on the leg bone of the mother to get all of the bone goodness that is needed to help them grow. What a beautiful world we live in. Um, in my book, What Happens When We Die, I sort of tease the idea. I give children room to to fear death and mortality, and I sort of play with the idea of an afterlife. And I write, maybe there's a magic part of us that floats above. This is what Aiden's wondering, that sees, hears, and feels the things that dreamers could speak of. Maybe to a place filled with chocolate kangaroos and cookie hats and flying fish and pink marshmallow shoes. And bullies go to a place where beds are full of ants, and toenail soup is all they eat in prickly underpants. One of my books, um, that actually probably one of the most popular ones, it's called There's a Dragon in My Garage, inspired by Carl Sagan's dragon in the garage analogy. And the children build a fort in the woods and it's very cold and they need heat. So Hilbert comes along and says, he knows there's a dragon in his garage who could help. Then Hilbert appeared, he said. I just overheard. I know who could help. This might sound absurd. He's terribly wise, knows all sorts of things. He's covered in scales with two speckled wings. His nickname is Carl. He's not a mirage. This dragon, he lives inside my garage. And then the children go into the garage and they actually they don't see a dragon, and Hilbert says, oh, I forgot to mention this dragon's invisible. And then they go into scientific investigation. They say, well, maybe we could take the sand and spread it on the ground and see if his footprints are here. And Hilbert says, oh, I forgot to mention he floats, so he doesn't have footprints. Well, maybe we could take the spray paint and spray, and on and on and on. And it's teaching critical thinking with Hilbert's playful fib. This is a book I'm working on now with a new artist. It's called How We Found the Earth is Round. And Annabelle and Aiden watch a boat sail over the horizon. And they wonder where it went. Did it fall off the edge of the earth? And the book goes through many playful fibs. Aiden wonders, is there a boat elevator on the edge of the earth, which is why the boat is sort of disappearing from the bottom up very slowly. So these are ways to just play with children, build a bond with them, and give them playful lies that are bursting for correction. A third way to nurture critical thinking is to encourage them to seek a different opinion. So anything my children ask me, even does God exist? What happens when we die? Why are we here? I'll say, what do you think? And then it comes to me. If I don't know it, I say I don't know, which is an amazing thing to say to children. I'm not being it's a important lesson, and I'll get into that. And then I'll tell them what I think. Then I'll say, go ask Uncle Frank what he thinks. Go ask mommy what she thinks. Children need to understand that pluralism is okay. People have different beliefs, and adults have different beliefs. And don't feel like you need to protect them because they're going to grow up and be out there in the world anyway. So they should seek different opinions, and they shouldn't be afraid to entertain different opinions without accepting them. This is something that's very important. Demolish the idea of an all knowing authority. Children should not think that any one grown up knows everything and that there's an oracle of truth. And the way to do that is children see their parents first, and after that, all adults as the oracle of all knowledge and all truth, right? So when you tell your children, I don't know, you're not only being honest and building a bond with them, but you're showing them, if mommy, if Aunt Sally doesn't know this guy on TV with a funny hat who's shouting the stuff, he knows it. Like my dad said, I don't know, and people have different opinions about this. Children will learn that this stuff is complicated, and they won't. The idea of an all-knowing authority will be laughable to them. So admit you don't know, and also feeding playful fibs. Those are ways that you are kicking the pedestal out from under you as an ultimate authority for children, because you don't want children to think that there could be just one person who knows everything. So kick the pedestal out from under you by saying, I don't know, feeding them playful fibs like we talked about. And those are ways to foster critical thinking. Okay, once you've done those two things, your child's curious, they're asking you questions. You already said, well, what do you think? And then they said, I think this. And what do you think, Daddy? And then you give a playful fib. Once you've gone all through all those steps, how do you talk about the big questions? So a lot of parents, myself included, I mean, it's very hard to find the words. What happens when we die? I mean, it's hard to find the words sometimes. So that's one thing my books do. We try to help parents find the words. One large challenge that I think needs to be recognized is that Myths and fairy tales are and continue to be fabricated to appeal to our emotions, which is great. They're great stories and they're important. Um, but facts and reality is what it is, and it's not custom made to appeal to our emotions, right? So it's often harder. I mean, the fiction storytellers have an advantage. They could do whatever they want. They could tell whatever they want. There's no limits. Um, if we want an afterlife, if we want reassurance from famine or dreams, whatever we want. So we have to counter this if we're trying to sell reality. And one way to do that is to show your kids science and nature shows and introduce them to science communicators like Carl Sagan, Neil deGrasse Tyson, Bill Nye the Science Guy, Cara Santa Maria. You show them, celebrate nature with them, go on hikes and nature walks, camping, even having pets, visiting farms. I'm infatuated with dogs. We have dogs in my house, and my children grow up with an appreciation of animals and nature. So these are ways to talk about the big questions, introduce them to these documentaries and these science shows. Mm, This reviews what we already said. It's important to say I don't know. Ooh, did I push something wrong? I might have pushed something wrong. Oh, that's okay. We're getting there. We're getting there. Um, it's important to say I don't know. When you tell my favorite teachers in college were the ones where I asked them a question and they said, I don't know. Hopefully followed by let's find out together. Let's go online. I'll show you how to look things up. Let's go ask this person. It's important to say I don't know because you're teaching them humility, you're building trust. And if you do know the answer, I think avoiding talking about it is almost essentially never a good solution. Um, there's ways to talk about it, and this is what my books do. We try to find the silver lining in reality, and we often find that it's more inspiring than any fairy tale could be. So this is what my books do. And yeah, I wanted to show you some slides here. I don't know if it's, let me try this. Oh, he's connected. I don't know what's going on with Zoom. But anyway, I'll just read these. So what happens when we die? It explains while your brain and your body may have had their last act, their energy never dies, and that's a scientific fact. When you die, your atoms will spread out to rejoin the universe. As flowers or rain showers or as stardust, they'll disperse. Every piece of you stays right here. That doesn't change. The only difference might be you're just differently arranged. Yeah, this is not working. That's okay. When you die, every single vibration that you've ever made, every particle or atom that ever bounced off your face, or was swayed by your smile, or the touch of your hair, will be forever changed by you. That will always be there. With the memories you leave for the people that you love, whom you have changed forever in more ways than you dreamed of. And what you could not see here is a slide of Annabelle looking at pictures of her family and her relatives and her community. Teach and celebrate not only facts, but the ethics we could learn from it. So at the end of what happens so it's important to not just teach. Here are the scientific facts, evolution, the Big Bang. How about we are all related? Thinking someone's different than you because of the color of their skin is as silly as thinking they're different than you because of the color of their hair or your eyes. We're all literally related. We share the same ancestors. We are all made out of the same stardust, and we have to be kind to each other because we're one big family. And that's not metaphorical. That's not an analogy. We are literally related. We don't, this is reality. In What Happens When We Die, the children are sad about mortality. So I teach the ethic at the end. It explains that one thing that makes things special is knowing that they end. That's what makes our lives so precious and each moment with our friends. During the book, they imagine living forever and everything sort of becomes stale and boring. So, because we have this time here on earth, eat that cake, sled that hill, laugh so hard it hurts your chest. And to yourself and others, you should be your very best. Appreciate the small things like the sunlight in your hair or wild piggyback rides and all the things we get to share. And before I end here, I'm just going to read two or more pages from my book. At the end of my book on evolution, it explains all living things, people from every single race, their dogs, cats, and flowers come from the same exact place. This reminds us to be kind and to treat each other well, that we are all connected and together we must dwell. I have a book, the fifth book is called Sapiens, and it's about human ancestry and how we all came from Africa. And it talks about the species that humans evolved from, Australopithecus afarensis. And we found a fossil, we called her Lucy. We think it's a female because it's smaller, it's a little on the small side. And when the paleontologists found her, they were listening to the Beatles, Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, so they named her Lucy. We're all the same, but different. We're different, but the same. We come in different colors, but we have the same name, Sapiens. Our story is etched into our DNA, along with those of others we picked up along the way. Despite the borders and divisions we all like to construct, we are all children of Lucy. We all came from Africa. In Worlds Within Us, it ends by saying about space. There's worlds within us you would not believe. Everyone that was and that ever will be are all within you and came from the stars. And that's just how big and amazing you are. So we're trying to teach children not only science, but ethics that we could glean from science. Um, the slide here is showing a picture of the 8 titles that I've put out. You could see about 5 of them over there. We're also selling the book series. There's one left here, but I have them on my website. If anyone has any questions, that is my presentation. I'm so happy to be here, and if anyone has any questions, I would love to hear them and talk to you more. Thank you. Thanks so much. That's okay. Oh, the internet went down. Okay.
I'm gonna go first.
Yes, hi.
I'm curious, how long does it take to write a book?
How long does it take to write a book? Ugh. It's like how long does it take to paint a painting? Anywhere between, okay. I'm thinking about ideas sometimes for years, literally, and sometimes for a month. I'll put it around my head. I'll write a book for 2 hours a night for 2 weeks. 2 hours a night for 2 or 3 weeks, and then I put it away for at least 2 weeks because I don't want to look at it, and then I look at it again and tweak the syllables. So the first 8 books of mine are in rhyme; they're in meter, so it's a lot of like iambic pentameter and working. It's a lot, and then a lot of editing. Um,
Yeah.
my editor takes a month, and then she gets back because she has a lot of, and then she gets back to me, and then we go through another draft, and then illustrations could take 6 to 8 months.
Okay, because I was just impressed because of the rhyme in the meter.
Thank you.
It's
Thank
one
you.
thing to
It's
write a
hard.
book, but to make it rhyme,
Thank you.
that's the, that's the hard part, I
It's
think.
hard.
Okay.
And I've gotten better at it through the books. The first book, it's like now I read the first book. I'm like, yeah, that the emphasis, it's not just counting the syllables, it's also where the emphasis is fall. It's yeah. Da 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 da. It's and then you want to use that one word like government, but it doesn't. Yeah, it's not easy.
Thank you. Thank you very
Hi.
much. Two quick things. One, you studied philosophy, so I'm going to argue with you that you don't tell fibs. What you do is because you're not intending to deceive.
Good.
Okay, so I would say that's not a way to describe it.
Okay,
And
I
then-
like that.
Thank you. And then
I'll
the
take
other thing that I would say is that I studied philosophy and logic also. And I learned that little kids unlearn logic from the way parents talk to them. For example, if you say, if you clean your room, I'll take you to the movies, and you don't, they're
Right.
not going to understand conditional statements and logic
Right.
if they use their own experiences to translate it. So what do you do to keep children from because this is where my conflict is.
Mhm.
It makes sense to say to a kid after they clean their room, do you still want to go to the movies or would you rather go bowling? In other words, but you're breaking the form of logic because logic doesn't work with English. It works as a math system. But I wonder, how do you keep children understanding concepts of logic and still functioning as a family?
Mhm. So that's a good question, and I think that's a challenge that I face because I could be very rigid. Like I said this, we got to follow through, consistency, consistency. And that's important, and my wife, who's a lot softer than I, taught me, like sometimes, you know, y- every situation is different and we're human beings, we're not machines, and if you said you can't watch a movie tonight but you see there's a meltdown and they really pretty much deserve it and you regret saying you if you touch that you're not watching a movie night and they touched it, sometimes I've become softer, sometimes it's okay. It's a case by case situation. I wish I had a better answer, and when I do I'll let you know. Yeah, I'll write a book. Yeah.
Uh,
Hi.
I have two nephews.
Okay.
One is middle school, the other one is in second grade, and mainly the second grader I have in mind. But I was thinking that when you say tell them a bunch of obvious untruths,
Yeah.
there's kids are smart.
Yeah.
They're a lot smarter than me.
Yeah.
And if I was to use that, I can very easily see them saying, oh, after a while, if I give enough of those, oh, don't ask her. She doesn't know anything. And I'm totally written off. How do you
Uh-huh.
redeem yourself?
Your fibs have to be funnier. Um, I think if you tell a good fib, your kid knows you're in on the joke. They don't think that you think it's real. So I think, yeah, I think they almost admire you more because they're like, oh, there's something she's not telling us. She really knows. She's just playing games with like she knows. It almost brings you up a bit. Yeah, I think it's hard though. I see what you're saying. That's why the fib has to be so ridiculous that of course you don't believe it. Right? Like the moon is just down the block around the corner. So it has to be ridiculous. And like you said, kids are smart. They'll know you don't believe it if it's ridiculous enough. So make it ridiculous. That's the best I could say. Yes, hi.
Okay. Hi, JR. Last summer, JR presented at during Zoom as part of the American Ethical Union annual conference. And so I heard his presentation last summer and I bought all his books.
Mm,
So I just want to say that if you're on the fence, they are really, really terrific. I think 2 points or 2 things I'm thinking you didn't include in this presentation,
yeah.
JR, is there is a book I'm trying to remember. It's something like The World is Made for Me.
Yes.
That and that's really about climate change. It starts
Yes.
out with these little, maybe you could say it better than me, these little tiny creatures that think that the world is made for them. And then
Yes.
time goes on, the dinosaurs and how we, of course, as Homo sapiens and top of the food chain, think the world is made for us. And
Right.
yet what has happened to all these other things.
I
It's
love it.
really terrific. And the other thing I was thinking is there's a little comments on the side that are really quite sophisticated pieces of fact and information that an older child might read to a younger child and still learn so much from. They're really rich, rich books. And I am happy to lend you, Rachel, and Barbara any of my books, or we might think about purchasing them for the society for when Sunday school starts again here.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Yeah, I'm glad you. That's a book that I can't. People say, "What is it about?" So I wrote a book called "This World Was Made for Me," in a satirical way, and on the cover it shows Annabelle and Aiden and humans standing on the pile of all the animals that went extinct before us, and it's just I'm trying to show children humility. Like we just showed up in evolutionary terms. So, and it's hard to explain what that book is about because it's about evolution, mass extinctions, environmentalism, and climate change. but it somehow all works, but I can't, it takes a minute to explain. It's hard. Yeah. So I'm glad you enjoyed that book. That's one of the books I brought here. So we have a few copies here that I'm signing today. Uh, thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah. Any other questions or comments?
You know,
Yeah.
I feel bad saying this, but one time my daughter asked me what happens when you die, and I just said, "You cease to exist, and the worms eat your eyes out." And and it was kind of like brutal in a way.
Right.
I mean, should I have done it? Is it wrong to say it that way? I
I
mean,
mean, I'm not going to tell someone what's wrong or what's right.
I mean,
But we do. I mean, our consciousness, I don't think exists anymore, but our atoms do, and our
yeah,
energy
yeah,
does,
yeah.
right?
I
Like
just
our
said,
right?
I just said basically, you just stop thinking, existing, and
Yeah,
you rot, basically.
right,
I
right.
mean, and and
So
I'm
you should
curious.
write a children's book
I don't think I
called
could
"You
do it.
Rot," and it could have worms on the cover,
And I'm
or
curious.
you rejoin the universe.
Maybe I was a little too blunt
Right,
in doing that, but obviously she did very good anyway. So
right, right.
she, and one thing I think children are very adaptable and very, you can do bad things in the kid unless you keep doing it over and over again. They're very adaptable, and
Right, right, right. Yeah. I think this is a good example of how we have our facts, we have reality, and I think there's infinite ways to say it. I think semantics, I was talking with you before, so much is semantics. I mean, you rot, you rejoin the universe. Your atoms, become part of, the memories you leave behind will live on with the people that you, I mean, everything could be looked at, even fiction, everything could be looked at in different ways. So that's the key. So that's when we talk to our children, we should keep that in mind. There's always a way to say it that's beautiful and inspiring. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yes.
So it's all about the how to tell the kids to create creativity thinking or whatever that. But I also wanted to know that how do you have you been nurturing or maintaining your creativity, or like how you can output yourself in a book, or you choose kids book, right? But
Yeah.
you could have like different way to nurture your creativity or idea or whatever that, big thinking or critical thinking, whatever that.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I'm a trademark attorney during the day, and it kills no, it's okay, but this really helps me stay creative. Yeah.
Your talk, a lot of what you said reminded me of a bastardization of one of my favorite speeches, which Chief Seattle, about all
Yeah.
things are connected. It reminded me so much of that. I don't know if you must
I
have read
quote
it.
him in my book, "This World Was Made for Me," saying the world, um, we don't belong to the world. No, the world does not belong to us, but we belong to the world, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. Chief Seattle.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. That book is pretty much based on the quote. I mean, that's what I'm trying. I love that quote. Yeah. 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 I have to hear it. I haven't heard it. Okay. I'll find it online. I'm gonna, yes.
Just quick question. So illustrations, is that something that you knew how to do, or did you have to learn, or?
I didn't do them. I'm artistic, but I found people who could do much better than I. I
Okay.
hired illustrators.
Okay.
The first six books are actually, I never even met the illustrator. She lives in a village in Italy, and it was all online. I've never met her. And once I was on a podcast being interviewed, and then we brought her on, and then we met we spoke for the first time ever, like a year ago on a podcast. It's all been email. Yeah, it's crazy. But yeah, I tell her, I'll sketch out a little bit my idea, and then she'll send back a sketch, and I'll say, "That's great. Can we make the sun a little bit bigger? Maybe move that a little to the right?" And yeah, but I don't. Yeah, it's been a big self-learning process how to do the whole author thing, self-publish.
Is your book any time?
No. No, I've gotten different people have wanted to translate, but it rhymes and it's in meters, so it's hard to, yeah, yeah, yeah. So,
This is your next project.
what's that?
This is your next project. Do it in Italian.
There you go. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. There's actually an organization called Belief Beyond Borders, I think. And they'll go into Islamic country. They have a website where they'll have science, books, children's books, and adult books about evolution, the Big Bang, translated to Arabic. And it's free. The ebooks are free online. So they've been translating my books, or said they're going to, and they haven't gotten back to me for a while. But they should be translating my books to make them available in the Islamic world for free so people could read them. Yeah. Yeah.
Do you ever think about taking your books to like Christian library? It's like
No. But that might be a good idea. I don't know. I don't know. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. If anybody wants to chat with me more or flip through my books, they're over there. I'm signing them today. And we have some backpacks and stuffed tardigrades. Thank you so much. All right.